you finally, introducing you to our amazing jury here. Before we move ahead with all the official announcements, I would like to invite Mr. Linesh Singh. Please join me, and I would love if you can give your, wise words.
Not every fund will invest in every startup. That's the gap. So if a fund has a portfolio, you need to understand what portfolio you fit in. Are you an edtech startup? So you have to look at an edtech fund that is investing in edtech, and then they have matrix based on which they measure, and then they evaluate, and then they finally invest. So that is the part where we become deal sourcing partners to VC funds, and obviously happy to do these community events so that we meet each other, understand each other. Believe me, when I see Shark Tank or community events or those big events, a lot of founders think if I go there, I'll take the check and come home. If that is what you are coming with an expectation, believe me, it won't happen today also. You are just going to meet the fund. Try to have a trust which you can build over a period of time. 10,000 Startup India is always happy to build that trust. So give me updates, what you are doing. I'll translate that in my language to VC funds to tell them that you are a good startup. It might not be the right time today, but it might be a right time tomorrow. So that's what we do. So we are basically facilitators to raise funds. Thank you so much.
I would like to felicitate all our jury members. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate you joining us on a long weekend, and would really appreciate all of your insights and the experience that you'll be sharing with our pitches today. And of course, I'm sure after the discussion, you will be bombarded with the questions. Harsha is principal of Inflexa Ventures, where she manages deal execution and portfolio management. With a legal background, she validates potential deals and previously worked in senior roles at Big Four companies. Mr. Gaurav Thakkar. So Gaurav is VP of Investments with Rockstar Capital as a head of startup investment teams at the fund. And he oversees entire transaction process, starting from sourcing potential deals to executing and closing them. Additionally, he actively participates in the fund's fundraising efforts. So, welcome Gaurav. So, Jimit is an experienced media professional who recently started his own company, Monolithic Media, which has already secured 45 startup clients for various marketing requirements. Currently, he is working with startups funded by Sequoia India and other VCs, including celebrity clients like Katrina Kaif. So you can reach out to him if you want a Katrina's autograph. So thank you so much, jury, for joining in. I am so excited to learn from all of you, how we talk a lot about funding, right? So I'm sure we all over here have met so many people, have attended so many sessions talking about funding, how to raise funds. But what after that? What happens after that? So today, we'll be talking a lot about holistic journey of a startup, where it's not just about funding. It's also about how a startup, develops their product, how they focus on their marketing, how they focus on their growth, media, and of course the compliance side of it. So that's why I have amazing experts in different areas, the legal, the marketing, business development, and the marketing side of it. We'll also talk a little bit about HR. So HR, I have recently understood from my investor friends, right, where a startup really faces a lot of challenge in terms of hiring at their early stages. And hiring that quality at your early stages is almost, more than either impossible or difficult, we can say that. So I would love to learn from you. You have met so many startups in the industry. You meet a lot of them every day. What do you suggest to these startups, in terms of hiring or the journey of hiring? How do you see that? And in your experience, can you give me an example?
Hi everyone, good afternoon. In terms of hiring, I think for us, when we look at startups, when we evaluate pre-investment as well as working with them post-investment, the first thing to identify is the gap of skill set they have. Are the founders having adequate complementary skill sets? Do you need it's not only about hiring at the top level, but it's also that do you have adequate second level bandwidth to take away work from the founders who can be given certain responsibilities. I think identifying that gap is first and most important part. Once you've identified what skill sets you need, you identify what are the gaps in the organization structure you want to fill up, and that gap need not be filled up on day one. You can have a plan that, okay, this is where I want to make my organization structure in say 18 months or 24 months, and then based on various milestones you start filling in those gaps.
I think before that, I'll say we have ourselves only struggled to do hiring, being a relatively new fund, still building our brand, right? So I think that problem is in-house rather than outside. But honestly, kind of hiring you need to do, what kind of skills you need, I think starts from the day as a founder you decide I want to start something, because the first thing you need to identify is a co-founder. So right, I think it starts from that very day where you try to figure out who is my potential co-founder, what are the complementary skill sets that you need, and of course this percolates down while building the team. But I think one thing to highlight here is that while skills are important because you're hiring for a specific role, I tend to see that people don't give so much focus on the cultural fit. And that's been a big problem that I've seen why people don't sustain for a long time. Skills, you may have a certain level, you can always develop once you join, But cultural fit is something that I think founders need to be very cautious about. It's so funny, I see founders asking, during the interview process, what's your 5-year plan? I mean, वो स्टार्टअप को नहीं पता वो 5 साल में कहाँ पे होगी, तो वो उसको कैसे पता होगा ज्वाइन करने के बाद कि उसकी जर्नी 5 साल की कैसी होगी, right? So I think focus more on the cultural fit. Do you think that this guy is somebody who can be a hustler? Because startup environment is so crazy, right? You need to be multitasking, you need to be doing a lot more than for the role that you're hired. If you don't sense that thought alignment in the new hire, I think you'll always struggle. So focus on the cultural fit is what I would say.
Yeah. So one thing that I have to start with, my startup is very young. I wouldn't call it old. Neither should any one of you, and so am I. But what I have realized in this 2 to 3 years and the time that I was employed is that we need to think it practically that जो आया है वो जाने वाला है. No one is gonna stay with you forever. Your co-founder is not gonna stay with you forever. At times that's the case. So be practical, and while you're hiring, I believe hire the right person rather than looking at the figures, because the right person can help you scale. But if you keep pushing down the figures to hire a person at a let's say a much cheaper cost, I believe then that's the case where you are going to hire the wrong person, because वो आपके यहाँ skill learn करके he's going to go somewhere else and take up a better job. Usually it's a 6 months period when a fresher will leave your startup and go elsewhere and take your skills, take your name, take the things you have taught him or her, and take it elsewhere and get another job which is 2x of what you're paying. Instead, if you're paying a person right away upfront, he or she might stay with you for a longer term, and it's going to benefit you rather than teaching someone, rather than taking that whole probation process again and again every 6 months. It's better to maybe hire the right person, pay him or her the right salary, and get what you need out of him or her.
Thank you. I think really insightful. I think I want to understand. I meet a lot of innovators, right? I keep on attending such sessions. I keep on meeting a lot of entrepreneurs and innovators each and every day. So monthly, more than 100 plus maybe. Different innovations and different sectors. I'm sure you must have gone through a lot of them throughout your experience. So how do you identify that this is the right innovation, or this is something that is the next thing? What are your criterias? I want to understand.
I think that flexibility when we say that it's important that somebody has spent that effort to understand your product and is giving you feedback. Not to say brush it off saying that I've spent more hours creating this product and you're not doing it. I think that person is also putting in time with you because they appreciate your efforts and they are trying to see that okay, this might have a better future. So because I've seen founders where they have pivoted their product from the initial use case to have a much more larger successful market, successful cases. And we've also seen founders where after being told repeatedly by multiple people, they've been saying that no, I want to work only on this, and then it's not scaled.
Great. So I think let me try and answer this question with an example of one of my portfolio company being my very first investment. So there's this company called Everest Fleet. Okay. Most of the Uber Go cars that you see on the road are owned by the company called Everest Fleet. Okay. When you look back few years when Uber Ola started, what was their pain point? They are experts in developing the tech and not operations, right? The founder of Everest Fleet identified a problem, saying, look, let me handle that for you. I will own the cars, I'll manage the drivers, and I'll give it to you. You focus on your platform. Today you look back and you say, it looks so obvious, but I think these are real solvable problems I wanted to highlight through this example, right? Once you've identified a problem, great. I think the second thing is, do you have a solution which is scalable, right? And third, are you the right person to kind of address it? I think a lot of people don't think about this third point. I think they see, I have seen a problem, I know the solution, let me jump into it. I think that third point is equally important. Are you the right person? And I think this again goes back to the first point that we were making about hiring, is that once you address that third question of are you the right person to do it, you will automatically understand what's the skill set you are coming with, and for you to build that solution at scale, what are the complement skills you're looking at. And I think that's how you kind of go about identifying a co-founder,
Thank you. So I have 2-3 examples to share here. And one is Ainari, which is Women Health and Hygiene. Second is Yuga Life, which is an e-commerce platform for all your health brand needs. And third is Tessora, which is more like a home appliance brand. So when they started off, they initially were focusing more on Tessora and on building Yuga Life. But later did they realize that Yuga Life is the need of an hour. So all of them took a quick pivot, gotten on board Katrina Kaif as an investor and as a brand ambassador, launched her, and I think the brand is doing amazing. Like to be very honest, recently we came across their reviews. One of a person reviewed it that the power gummies were fresher when they ordered it from Yuga Life as compared to when they ordered it from the power gummies website itself. So that's when you need to know when to pivot. And the second thing is you need to have, how many of you are coders here, like into tech? You know if the if function, if not, then what? Or if yes, then what? I think when you look at a founder or a co-founder, you need to know what plans do they have. Do they have if not, then what, or no? Or are they ending at if not, to kuch nahi? We see, I think only 10% of startups succeed. Recently I came across Spenny. I don't know how many of you are aware about Spenny, but I received an email from Spenny that we are sunsetting. Now that's just not Spenny, but 100 other startups that are sunsetting every day because they don't have another product in their lineup. Similar startup, Slice and Unicard, they were part payment EMI systems. They had to sunset because they didn't have any other product. They had to let go people, they had to sunset. When RBI released new rules, they didn't have anything to do. I think Rapido too. Rapido came into the market without any regulations in that space. I think in Maharashtra, not in Maharashtra, I think in Mumbai and Bangalore it's banned as of now. So we don't know when other local bodies will also ban it. So I think that's when you need to have a strong if not then what. and that's where you will be able to focus. So when I work with any startup, when I onboard a startup for their marketing needs, I always see that what vision do they have. Do they have a very short term vision, or are they looking at a long term goal? Maybe they have a long term goal, and I have onboarded startups at almost no cost. They are not paying me anything, but I see that they have a vision, and I see that there's a growth and where I can grow with them. So if right now I help them, maybe I can grow with them in future, and that's when I've onboarded them. So I think this is very important when we work with these startups. So,
I would like to understand from our investors as well as you, working with startups day and night. What about the compliance part, right? Startups are not very much keen about talking legal part or documentation, acha term sheet, negotiations, boring. So what do you feel about the compliance part? How important is it pre as well as post funding?
I think compliance is important both pre-funding as well as post-funding. I think especially a lot of founders who don't understand legality, they're more into tech side, they don't understand a lot of things. They kind of tend to overlook a lot of these things, and that's where the problem starts. Compliance as a culture, you might not know what rules are there, you might not know what regulations, how many laws to complete and that, but it can completely kill your business model tomorrow. You don't know, some regulation is there, you're not following it, gone, your business is gone, completely gone. I think not knowing regulations is not saying that we didn't do compliance because we were not aware of it. That cannot be the answer. I think when you are a founder, when you're trying to develop a product, it's important to evaluate the regulatory aspect of it. You might not have the expertise in-house. Go ahead, hire somebody to do it, get somebody to do it for you. And it also helps you develop the culture. I think if you have this thought in mind that right from my start, my filings have to be on time, my taxation filings have to be on time, all of this has to be time, it kind of sets a tone and culture in the organization where it says that, okay, going forward, I'm going to do this there. And when we come across early stage, like, just angel funded startups or stuff, where we see that, okay, compliances are being met, things like that, it also gives investors a lot of comfort. As investors, because we will always do legal due diligence, financial diligence, and it gives us comfort that, okay, this guy has that thought process that compliances is important. It gives us comfort in terms of, what additional work we have to do post investment, because I think especially with institutional investors coming in, your compliances become more essential, because
I think if pre-funding you don't take care of your compliances, I think investor will make sure post-funding you are definitely doing it. But I think if you ask me, my wish list would be that the founder has to look at compliance from day zero. Not to the T, but start building towards that. And let me broaden the meaning of compliance also. From the time you decide to set up your venture, there are so many government schemes that you can benefit from if you are set up in a certain way, if your business objectives are worded in such a way that you can become eligible for some of these benefits from the government. So I think it starts from day zero, according to me. And of course, you keep building on that. I know as a founder, you will say, I have 10 things on priority. Compliance doesn't matter, right? I understand that thought process, but I think you have to keep nibbling away at the compliance piece from day zero for your own benefit. And as Harsha mentioned, I think some level of preparedness, if you've been doing it through this journey before you raise that first round of external capital, I think could do you a world of good, simply because the amount of bandwidth you will then spend in terms of fulfilling those compliances before you get that money in the bank, you will say, why didn't I start that earlier, right?
So I think I would like to mention another startup of mine which is into two-wheeler EV. So while working with them, what I realized is that there's something called FAME, FAME, which the government has introduced, and your vehicles need to be just like BS1, BS2, BS3. For EVs, they have FAME. So now FAME 1, FAME 2. And while working with them, what I realized is 80% startups were penalized. EV startups were penalized because they did not comply with those regulations that government had. Now, a lot of startups that we know are in the market have done amazing branding, marketing. शायद आप में से किसी के पास वो vehicle होगा भी. But when they say they are made in India, they are not. 80% of their parts are imported and they are just assembled in India. And that's where compliance play an important role. Production stop कर दिया है वो लोग ने. Because government has banned those products in the market. Randomly, the products don't catch fire while running on the road, right? So I think that's where compliance plays a very important role. आप product बना दोगे बिना compliance के market कर दोगे. You have to invest in your own brand name or your product, your product brand. आप नहीं करोगे invest, market कर दिया, things are gonna go against what you have planned, and yeah, you will be again in the scrutiny. And you will raise play. Compliance came in, they had to face backlash, they had to run overseas. Like there are hundreds of such startups. So I think compliance since day one, and as a founder, you should know your compliance so that no one can thug you at the end of the day. आपका product है, आपको product का in and out पता होना चाहिए. What is good, what is not, what is legally doable, what is not, what are loopholes. What if I enter that loophole? I think I would like to mention Arjun ka Chakravyu. He knew only 6 of it, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Abhimanyu. I'm sorry, Abhimanyu. He knew only 6 of it and not the last one. Compliance hi ho gaya. So I believe that's where it's very important to know ins and outs of your product. Product bana liya, dekh lo ek baar. Biggest example is metaverse. क्रिप्टो ने जितना अप्स एंड डाउन्स देखा है किसी ने नहीं देखा है. इतना अप्स एंड डाउन्स कोई. Why does Warren Buffett doesn't venture into crypto? He is such a good investor. कुछ तो सोचा होगा ना. क्या क्रिप्टो का बेस नहीं है? I mean, of course, you must have invested. Not going against that. बेस क्या है? कोई कंपनी का IPO लॉन्च होता है, उसका ऑफिस होता है, उसका फैक्ट्री होता है, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट होता है, उसके पास प्रोडक्ट्स होते हैं, एसेट्स होते हैं. Yeah, definitely. I have been a part of the crypto trend. So yeah, but yeah, hence I feel compliance is very important.
I think we'll have one another session regarding this specifically. And I see the enthusiasm of jury. I will repeat the jury. So I need the audience as well. So thank you so much. Very interesting insights. Really amazing. Before we start the Q&A session, I just quickly want to understand from an investor's point of view, how do you identify or what are the kind of key performance indicators for a startup to track their progress basically as a startup? Different KPIs that.
I think KPIs will differ industry to industry, but some I would say rule of thumbs what we see that is the startup performing or not performing is that how in terms of their roadmap where they stand and how closely that roadmap has been developed. So if they have a product roadmap saying that 1, 2, 3, 4 modules need to be developed, how closely have they followed it, not followed it? That kind of indicates what's the thought process which has gone into it. If they have to pivot, I mean, that's a different story altogether. But that gives us that comfort that, when you are making that plan, how much thought has gone into that plan, and it's not just something that let's do this for the investors saying that they need a budget or they need a product roadmap, let's do that. Yeah, I mean, so I think that is important. Second is in terms of obviously financial performance is important. But again, the thought process, if there are variations, why the variations, I think understanding that is there. Then individual businesses will have individual KPIs. You will have SaaS models where you'll have subscriptions as KPIs. You will have manufacturing models where you will have, it's very important that what has been projected, that this is my projection, both financial and business, versus where I stand and what I'm not meeting, why I'm not meeting is different. Individual level, there'll be a lot more detailed KPIs for each business.
I think each person in this room would know this statement, so I'm not making any new. Stop chasing vanity metrics. I think in the current environment, not only we, but our portfolio companies who have raised subsequent round of funding, we are seeing the depth in which investors are going in terms of understanding the business model, right? It's no longer about the top line growth. It's no longer about GMV, GTV. Get real. What is, for example, your customer stickiness? How many are repeat? Is your growth purely coming from discounts? Get detail as much as possible. Also, another thing I see is that a lot of this tracking of key metrics tend to happen in Excel. I think there are a lot of tools out there that if you can start using as early as possible, it's very helpful. And I'll give you an example. I'll not name the company, but I was looking at one company in the SaaS business, smart founder, but maintaining everything in Excel. One fine day he realized that because he was maintaining in Excel and this role was allocated to somebody, there were certain errors that were happening in the way it was being punched in, that he didn't have a complete idea of what the numbers actually were. Now, this is so critical, right? Because eventually that data talks to you for you to decide the strategy or the next step. So I think if you get tools, and I think SaaS, there are thousands of tools available out there which you can use from day one, which really helps you track things like what is your funnel like, how are you growing, where should you focus in terms of the spends, host of things, right? So start getting as detailed as possible. Especially in this environment, investors are just not looking at top line anymore.
I think KPIs is something that right from a co-founder to the person who's a fresher should maintain. As a company and as a person both. If I would like to talk about some marketing KPIs and in terms of business development and sales, again, I have seen startups fail miserably because they don't have the right knowledge of maintaining their KPIs. Yeah, maybe your KPIs are not performing well for 1 quarter, for 2 quarters, for a year. But if they are not performing well for another year, I think that's when you need to think if you're doing the right thing or not. And that's when you need to, that's when you need to pivot. Like he said, Instagram पे जितना हम scroll करेंगे ना, हर रोज एक नया AI tool देखने को मिलता है. Right, तो KPI के भी इतने सारे tools है for every sector. If you are an investor, you have those KPIs. If you want investment, if you are into marketing, if you are into sales, product development, whatever it is, there are 1,000 AI tools. And yeah, I think that's what the future, that's where the future lies. I think you need to know the right tool to use. We need to, maybe some years ago, people might have rejected calculators as well. Especially Indians. We still do. But somewhere we'll have to gel in with the AIs and become their managers. And yeah, that's how I think these tools will be able to help us with the right KPIs. I've seen, startups achieve, let's say something if they had to achieve in Q2, they've achieved in Q1. So now they are 3 months ahead to plan their third quarter. Because Q2 to achieve ho gaya hai already. So then they have to just, maintain those things or maybe scale up and achieve those KPIs. But agar KPIs hai hi nahi, like, if you are starting up, if you are into a B2B model, if you have achieved 1 client, 2 client, 3 client, oh wow, I've achieved 3 clients. Nahi yaar, abhi 3 kya, itna sara space empty hai. You have to fill in so much more. So I think that's where KPIs matter a lot. Like if I have to give an example of myself, first year when I started off, first 6 months, I just had 2 clients. Just 2 clients. Not more than that. Maybe people were not trusting me. Maybe people were not, maybe they were not happy with my work, maybe they were not happy with my pitch. But I had set a KPI that every month I have to meet, at least I have to meet 20 to 30 people, 20 to 30 companies, and maybe try to convert at least 2 of them. So now 6 months हो गए, उसके बाद एक और साल निकल गया, 1.5 years, and today I have 45 startups that I'm working with. So 43 startups I got in last 1 year, one financial year. So now, that's where I think KPIs will help you grow. And you have to push yourself, you have to push your team as well. Maybe एक बार अचीव नहीं करेंगे, अगर बार बार अचीव नहीं करे तो maybe आप में fault है, आपकी team में fault है. That's what I feel.
So honestly, for me, this was very insightful because I have been on the funding side more and meeting a lot of investors in terms of, the funding part. I'm introducing the right startups to the right investors. That's what we try to do. But this kind of back-end information, it's really, I think, behind the scenes of what's happening in the investors' side, where what is the kind of information that they actually need from a startup. So I would really encourage all of my startups today to, not just focus on what is your ask, but also try and empathize with our investors here with the kind of information that they need.